Welcome to From the Heart, the channel that begins to delve into emotional abuse and how toxic relationships affect not only our emotions, but our thoughts, behaviors, and most importantly, our sense of self-worth. Here, we'll discuss how and why we end up in toxic relationships and understand how we can make decisions that are right for us. We'll also discuss how we can grow healthier and stronger as we focus on our self-worth and develop self-love. My name is Sonia Gandhi, and I'm a therapist, and I'll be your host, so please be my guest. As humans, we have a strong survival instinct, right? Flight or fight, freeze or fawn. The brain has a way of creating the energy, adrenaline, or whatever we need to protect ourselves. So, for example, if we got into a car accident and a loved one was pinned down in a burning car, we would all of a sudden have this massive surge of energy to lift a car. Did we know we could do that? So there are so many things that go on inside of us that we don't understand and quite frankly don't even believe unless we see it. So I was what you would call cautious. I often saw the glass as half empty, not full. My brain allowed and directed me to be critical and skeptical. What I didn't realize was that we're not wired for happiness. Our brain has a negative bias. We are wired for what's wrong. We are wired for survival, which means our brain is constantly looking out for anything that could hurt us. This serves us well when we're crossing a busy intersection, but it does not serve us if we permanently live in that emotional state, always fearing what danger might lurk around the corner. So it was easy to go down the path of least resistance, to think negatively, be angry, judgmental, all the rest of these feelings. But there is so much more that goes on in our brain that we can't see or understand, but maybe we should believe. We are complex beings. We have emotions, behaviors, and thoughts that separate us from the rest of the animal kingdom. We are influenced by others around us, and we have the ability to influence others. But somehow we struggle to influence ourselves. You've probably heard the phrase, there's power in the mind. But being cautious, I was one of those who didn't believe it until I saw it. I lived in fear, which is an acronym that stands for false evidence appearing real. But I also know that when I listened to influential people like Oprah Winfrey or Tony Robbins or Deepak Chopra, I would feel this strange surge of something inside. Like a quote from Oprah, "You don't become what you want, you become what you believe." I never knew what it was, but I would have this spurt or this surge of energy or motivation to go do something I was working on or daydream about the great outcome. And for a short period of time, I would do something that I had been procrastinating about because my mind accepted it for that short time. But then, of course, it died down again. And the negative thoughts would come out of the shadows, and again the doubts and the negative talk would come back. I call that my inner critic. So, as I grew older, had a failed marriage, and sought out counseling, yes, as a therapist, I sought out counseling. I began to peel back some of the patterns inside of myself. I had some aha moments. I realized that having toxic people in my life influenced me to be hard on myself, not trust myself and my capabilities. I went to university initially to please others because that's what we do. We follow and are influenced by adults in our lives, as well as societal norms and expectations. I decided to be a social worker, much to my parents' dismay. I was supposed to go get my MBA or a medical degree, which I had absolutely no interest in. But I made one decision with a lot of doubt, but my heart was telling me it was the right thing to do. The part that was in line with the messages out there, which was to be in service of others. I knew that was my calling. But As I gave and supported and guided and coached and counseled others, I heard myself say things out loud which I didn't necessarily believe or took for myself. I worked with people who had experienced such trauma, who were beaten down in their lives by others who made unsafe decisions for them, left them to their own devices to protect them, and they were then abused, neglected, or exposed to things that young brains shouldn't be exposed to. After years of trying to work within a system which was there to protect the most vulnerable, which was the children, I realized that there are many systems that don't actually protect them. Not intentionally, but it was a flawed system. So I left looking for other ways to help others. And as I journeyed to find my calling or where I fit, I began to realize that most of us have experienced some pain in our lives, but we have normalized it, told ourselves it wasn't that bad, suck it up because someone had it worse out there than I did. If I were to take a poll on how many of you out there have experienced some form of trauma or pain, I would guess the percentage is pretty high, and definitely more than 50% of you. As humans, we do some pretty awful things to each other. We are wired to be negative and to cast shame, doubt, and inflict pain onto others. Often we ourselves are feeling all of those things. So, my journey personally and professionally has led me to a point of speaking out now. Remember, I have been my worst enemy, but all the roads seem to lead back to self. So somehow I have control over me now as an adult. I can choose to listen to or not listen to other people's opinion of what I should do or not do, feel or not feel, think or not think. We usually externalize how we are feeling. So, if someone was nice to me, if I got a promotion at work, or a compliment, then I felt good or had a good day. What I began to consider is, what if I think a positive thought about myself? Then what? My inner critic would pop up and say, wow, aren't you full of yourself? We have been so hardwired to normalize negative feelings about ourselves, to put on makeup, be thin, and look like the magazine covers, be supermom, and all of those things to feel good about ourselves. So I started to get more information. What if I liked myself? What if I showed up for myself? What if I started to stand up and speak for myself? Even though my inner critic told me that I was being arrogant or selfish, I started to realize that I do have control of parts of my brain. If I consciously try and access some of that power, like that surge I feel when I listen to something really motivating or read a post about some kind of empowerment. We see them all the time on Instagram and Facebook. The quote that resonates for some. They are always about strength or some kind of positive thinking. I would get a little surge like, yeah, so true. And then I would go about my day. It would be a fleeting thought and right back to ground zero. I have spent most of the pandemic starting up my private practice as a therapist. And as I began to provide counseling, I realized that self esteem, self worth, self compassion, and ultimately self love are all so difficult for us to feel. Or maybe we are frightened to feel them because we will be judged by the outside world. But do we have to be famous to share affirming and positive thoughts like Oprah, Tony Robbins, Deepak Chopra? Nope. Reprogramming your subconscious mind to feel fully confident, clear, and abundant is what I realized is possible. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting mind control. I'm suggesting that we start to allow into our mind messages that are the opposite to the ones that we have heard from a young age, that are now playing in our background without us even knowing it, and those that are also reinforced out in the real world, likely daily. If we allow positive messages to enter our conscious and subconscious mind, then who knows? We send out love to others, but let's consider directing it inwards. There are many places we can find information about those self words, but I would like to share not only educational information like the science behind the brain, but also to discuss it in real life, on the ground examples. So, I hope you will join me here weekly so we can discuss some of the factual and scientific information about how we think and feel, as well as some of the affirmations and messages we can start to use to start to influence us differently. This was From the Heart.